Unity of the Huachucas presents Su Nyhus, LUT. Love, the great harmonizer and healer.
Let's begin with prayer, meditation. So we allow our bodies to relax, and we allow our minds to clear. And setting aside all of the happenings before we came this morning, we focus our attention on the present moment as we gather together to choose to be the love that our global community needs and is. And so we set that intention to be one, to know our oneness, to share our oneness, and to hold our entire community in our sacred hearts. And so we think about our community. We think about our folks here and in Arizona. We think about all the folks in the United States and around the world. And we think about our plants and our animals and all the beauty that surrounds us, knowing that we are one with all that is. And it is that love, divine love, that binds us. And so together we bring the all with us as we enter the silence. We give thanks for this opportunity to be together, and we affirm that we are one family in that eternal divine love. And may we this morning be a blessing to each other as we listen, as we share, and as we share in our food today. So we give thanks and praise for our growing willingness to accept and to express the divine love that we are. And so it is. Amen. This month, I understand the focus is on the divine attributes of love and enthusiasm, also known as zeal. And so as we talk about love this morning, may we think about expressing that love with zeal and enthusiasm. And as our affirmation this month says, we can fairly sizzle with zeal to know what is ours to do and to go forth and do that. So I'm going to begin with some thoughts from kids about love. A 4-year-old. Love is when your puppy licks your face, even when you've left him or home alone all day long. And a 7-year-old. Love is like a little old woman and a little old man who like each other even after all these years. A 6-year-old. Love is when you're missing your teeth and you're still not afraid to smile because you know your friends still love you even though part of you is missing. Oh. And this is my favorite because I think only a kid would come up with something like this. This is a 5-year-old. When someone loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know that your name is safe in their mouth. Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
So our Bible verse comes from the book of Corinthians, chapter 13. And it's one that we frequently hear at weddings. However, the Apostle Paul, who wrote the book of 1 Corinthians, isn't actually writing to a couple that's getting married. Rather, he's writing to the people in the church, because he's seeing and hearing about a lot of division that's happening. In fact, you could say that there was party line division, something that we're familiar with in our world. And people were divided on whether they should follow Paul, or they should follow Apollo, or they should follow Peter. Then there was another concern divide that was plaguing the community. They would have a community meal at the service when the Christian church first started. And the community meal was held each time they met. And it was becoming a kind of come, first serve event, so that the people that came first had an opportunity to eat and drink a lot more than they probably needed. And when the rest of the folks came, frequently those who had less resources, there was nothing left to eat. So Paul was telling them, also telling the congregation, that let's let love bind us together as a family. So the verse goes, love is patient and kind. It is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It doesn't insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. This is a little bit down the chapter a bit, but one of my favorite verses. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put away my childish ways. And that's one thing I think we can be grateful for unity, because unity's teaching, one of the themes is time to grow up. Grow up and really embrace the love that we are. Unity defines love in the Metaphysical Dictionary as the great harmonizer and healer. Love is not a doing, love is principle. It is spiritual law. And love is our inherent divine nature. So whatever we focus our attention on, you might say that's what we are loving. So if my mind is focused on frustration and anger and discord, that's the harmony that I'm in, that's the consciousness in which I am in harmony with. And that's where I experience life from. If my mind is focused on acceptance, peace, compassion, and kindness, that's the consciousness I'm in harmony with. And that is what I draw into my life, and that is how I express through my life. It's also, love is seen as the pure essence of being that binds us together. This morning, as we focus on divine love, I'm going to share some thoughts from a book I've been reading this winter that's really good. And it's called Reclaiming the Bible for a Non-Religious World. And it's by the late Episcopal Bishop John Shelby Spong. And we're going to talk about the book of Hosea. The book of Hosea tells the story of God's unrelenting, unconditional love for his people. And it's the story of the marriage of Hosea and Gomer. Now, I'm taking the story from that book, and Bishop Spong says He willingly admits to letting his imagination run wild. So if you go back and read that story, you can think about his version of it. The story of Hosea and Gomer in the book of Hosea begins with God doing something quite bizarre. Now those of us who are Bible readers, especially of the Hebrew scriptures, know that's not unlike God. He does some pretty bizarre things. He asks us to do some pretty bizarre things. So God tells Hosea to marry a woman with a very questionable reputation and have children. Hosea obeys God, and he meets Gomer, marries her, and they have 3 children. Now Hosea is an older and settled man. He is one of the prophets of God, while Gomer is much younger and living quite on the wild side of life. Gomer was known for her dark and flashing eyes and her dancing feet. She was what we would call a party girl. It didn't seem like they could possibly stay together. Hosea, however, grew to love Gomer, and at first things went very well. But Hosea began to yearn for his quieter life before his marriage, and of course that brought tension into their relationship. And Gomer grew bored and restless, and the night came when she just didn't come home at all. Now Hosea was alarmed, and he immediately began to search for her, but to no avail. He looked high and low, and she was vanished without a trace or clue. Now Hosea had obeyed God, had married Gomer, had children, and grew to love her deeply. His love for her was unconditional and unlimited, and he refused to give up his search for her. Now in the patriarchal society in which Hosea and Gomer lived, women were property. And there wasn't many places that Gomer could go to, so Hosea began limiting his searches to slave markets. One day it happened. Hosea wandered into a particular slave market where men and women were being auctioned as property to buy. As he moved closer into the crowd, a woman was brought up on the stage for public inspection. Her hair was matted, her eyes were bloodshot, her face was lined, revealing the toil the years had taken. The crowd was raucous and loud. Who would pay anything for this woman who clearly looked worthless? Hosea, recognizing his wife, Gomer, he stepped forward, and there was total silence in the crowd as Hosea said with a clear and audible voice, bidding the highest price that he could for her. The crowd was stunned. Hosea, ignoring the crowd, walked forward, paid the price, took Gomer by her hand, and led her by all the mocking bystanders. Hosea brought Gomer home, where he informed his household that Gomer was not a slave, but his wife, and he installed her back in the place of honor she once occupied as the mistress of the household and as the center of his affection. Now just for a minute, let us imagine how Gomer felt. She had been chosen to be the wife of the prophet of God. And who knows what horrendous things had happened in her life that caused her to turn to the life of what the Bible described as a whore. We can only imagine her self-talk and the unknown spoken pressures that led her back to that lifestyle. She likely felt worthless and unlovable. And imagine how she felt when she learned that Hosea had refused to give up his search. The story used Hosea's unconditional love for Gomer to describe the unlimited, unconditional, forgiving love that is God principle, that is us. What does this story have to say to us about the divine attribute of love as unity, students of truth? In the story, Hosea held a consciousness of unconditional love for Gomer. Gomer seemed to struggle with accepting that love and realizing how precious she was. So for me, it's a story of holding on and letting go, of accepting and allowing. And even though there were deep differences in the lives of Hosea and Gomer, Hosea's love for her never ever wavered. Metaphysically, we're both Gomer and we're Homer. Gomer and Hosea. Gomer is symbolic of our intellect, our personality self, and Hosea is symbolic of our divine self. We are, each one of us, fully human and fully divine. Now there are times in our life when we feel less than. There are times when we may feel unloved, unlovable, and maybe even times when we feel worthless. And then we turn to Hosea consciousness and we remember the truth of our being. We're not only lovable, loved, and valued, we are the very expression of love itself. We are all creations of love and of light. An awareness of the divine attribute of love calls us to live from that consciousness of love, living in harmony with our personality and our divine self, living in harmony with each other and the world around us. Love being not a state of doing, but a state of being. So we begin by loving ourselves. For we know that if we don't love ourselves, we have no love to give to others. So we affirm that regardless of past and present mistakes and error thinking, in God mind we are precious, we are cherished, we are valued, and each one of us is a one-of-a-kind original. No one else in the entire universe has the exact set of experiences, talents, and gifts that we have. We accept that truth for ourselves so we can be free to live in a consciousness of unconditional love and harmony. In closing, to live from a consciousness of divine love allows us to demonstrate the ability to be whole, to be free, to be giving. We have an infinite capacity for compassion and forgiveness, and with divine love within us, we remember how to express that. We acknowledge the fullness of our humanity and the fullness of our divinity, so our human self can express our divine self and live in harmony in the world, no matter how things are appearing on the outer. Like Hosea in this story, we know whatever path Gomer walks does not change the truth of her being. She is, we are, fully human and fully divine. When we live from a consciousness of divine love, unconditional love, harmony, the people in conditions that are most difficult for us can be our very best spiritual teachers. It is in those situations that we are given the opportunity to remember who we are and to look beyond the outer to the very center of our being, first inside ourselves and then in others, so that we can continue to express our truth authentically and peacefully. Finally, a quote from the Buddhist monk and peace activist. Now I'm going to say this and you can correct me. Is it Thich Nhat Hanh or Thich Nhat Hanh? I'm not sure. This is what he says. It is probable that the next Buddha will not take the form of an individual. The next Buddha may take the form of a community, a community practicing understanding and loving kindness, a community practicing mindful living. This may be the most important thing we can do for the survival of the earth. Perhaps we at Unity are just that community. We are called to be nothing less than the great healer and great harmonizer. So let us this morning remove any blinders we have and see through the eyes of compassion, living in harmony with ourselves, with our families, with our community, with our global community. We set the intention to walk each day as a peacemaker, living our lives with an open heart, for all ever mindful of our thoughts and our actions. And so it is. Thank you.
Amen.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.